All right, so get ready because today we are going deep into the really unsettling story of Ángel Maturino Reséndiz.
The railroad killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His crimes were brutal and just like spread all over.
And the way he used the railway system, like it was his own personal,
Oh, it's so creepy.
like escape route.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, was he just a drifter who was violent, or did the trains themselves like make him more violent?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So we're going to be looking at his Wikipedia page today, and I got to tell you, there's some stuff on there that'll make you think twice about your next Amtrak trip.
Yeah.
We're going to do our best to figure out who this guy was,
Right.
what made him do what he did,
Yeah.
and what his story can teach us about the world.
Okay, let's start with the basics then, his early life.
Okay.
He was born Ángel Leoncio Reyes Reséndiz in Mexico back in 1959.
Wow.
And he used so many different names throughout his life.
Really?
It wasn't just about hiding who he was. It was almost like he wanted to keep changing
He inventing himself.
Yeah, like a ghost appearing and disappearing.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that really stands out to me is that he was deported from the U.S. at least 4 times.
4 times.
Before he was finally caught?
Yeah, I mean 4 times.
Makes you think, right?
Yeah, like did all that back and forth make him angrier, more violent?
Yeah.
Well,
Did the system fail him?
Or did he use the system?
Ooh, that's a good question.
All
right, so let's talk about how he did what he did, which is why they called him
the railroad killer.
Right. I mean, he traveled all over the place.
U.S., Mexico, Canada.
By train.
Yeah, and almost all of his crimes happened near train tracks.
Like, the train tracks weren't just transportation.
Right.
They were like...
his hunting ground.
Yeah, I mean, for people living near the tracks, the railway was a lifeline.
Yeah, a connection.
Yeah, and he turned it into something terrifying.
Ugh.
And we're talking at least 15 people murdered.
15.
Brutally murdered.
And he often used, like...
rocks, pickaxes.
Yeah, blunt objects.
It wasn't just killing, it was like he wanted to...
hurt them.
Yeah.
Inflict pain.
And here's another thing. Sometimes he would cover the bodies.
Why would he do that?
Remorse. Maybe respect. I don't know.
Maybe it was just to give him more time to get away.
Could be. Yeah.
Or like he was trying to, like, pretend it didn't happen.
Oh, wow. That's creepy. It's
Yeah.
all just awful. But to really understand how cruel he was, we need to look at some of the specific cases.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the details are rough, but they're important.
Yeah.
So let's start with Leafy Mason.
An 87-year-old woman.
Yeah, 87.
Beaten to death in her own home.
And get this. They used an antique fire iron.
Wow.
I mean, this wasn't random.
No, it was planned.
Chose her, a vulnerable victim.
I mean, why? What does that tell us about him?
Control power.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
And it wasn't just individuals. He went after families, too.
Right.
Like, think about Norman and Karen Cernick.
In a church.
Yeah, a church parsonage.
Legend to death.
With a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I mean, the terror they must have felt.
Yeah, and in a church.
It's supposed to be a safe place.
A sanctuary, right.
Yeah, by killing them there, it's like he was saying...
I don't care about your rules.
Or morality.
Yeah.
It's just, all of it's just awful.
Yeah.
But there's one story that really stands out.
What's that?
A story of just incredible resilience.
Oh, you're talking about Holly Dunn Pendleton.
Yeah. The only person who survived one of his attacks.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what it takes to survive something like that.
It does. It's a glimmer of hope in all this darkness.
It really is.
Holly's story is just unbelievable. I mean, she was attacked with her boyfriend, Christopher Meyer.
Right.
And Christopher, he didn't make it.
No.
He was bludgeoned to death.
With a rock.
Yeah, 52-pound rock.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. And Holly was raped and beaten.
It's a miracle she survived.
It really is.
Her strength is amazing.
It is, and she's so brave for sharing her experience.
Yeah, and helping other survivors.
Like, it shows that even after something so awful, there's still hope.
There is.
And her story, it really helps us understand how trauma affects people.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's been on TV, documentaries.
Oh, right.
She's given a voice to the victims.
Yeah, sometimes we forget that behind all the headlines and the court cases,
Right.
there are real people whose lives are changed forever.
Yeah.
Holly helps us remember that.
For sure. Her story is so important.
It is.
Okay, so let's talk about how Reséndiz was finally caught.
Okay.
It's pretty crazy how it happened.
What happened?
So it all starts with his sister, Manuela.
Okay.
She saw her brother's face on, like...
The FBI most wanted list.
Yeah, the 10 most wanted.
God,
Man,
I know.
seeing your brother's face on there?
Yeah, it must have been so hard for her.
It was, and she had to make a really tough choice.
Family or protecting others?
Yeah, and in the end, she did the right thing.
She turned him in.
Yeah, and he was captured on a bridge.
The bridge?
Yeah, between El Paso and Ciudad Juarez.
Wow.
I know. And Manuela and a spiritual advisor were there.
Oh, wow.
It's like that bridge was...
Like a dividing line.
Yeah, between his life on the run and facing justice.
Yeah, and the spiritual advisor.
Makes you wonder, was he looking for forgiveness?
Right.
Or was it all an act?
Yeah, we'll never really know.
But here's another twist.
What?
Reséndiz later accused the Texas Ranger who arrested him of lying.
Really?
Yeah, he said his family was told he wouldn't get the death penalty if he surrendered.
So was there a misunderstanding?
Maybe, or was he trying to manipulate things?
It's hard to say.
He really is.
It shows how, even in these high-pressure situations, things can get really complicated.
Definitely.
And this whole idea of, like, truth and lies,
Yeah.
it becomes even more important when we start talking about Reséndiz's mental state.
Right, because that became a big deal in his trial.
It did.
So Reséndiz starts saying these bizarre things.
Like what?
Like he's half angel.
Half angel.
Yeah, and that he doesn't believe in death.
What?
He actually told psychiatrists he couldn't be executed because he couldn't die.
Oh, wow, that's something else.
I know, it's like, how do you even respond to that?
Right, and legally, it's a huge problem.
Oh, so?
Well, to be on trial and you have to understand what's happening.
Right.
And be able to help your lawyer.
Right.
But if Reséndiz really believed he was immortal...
Then was he really able to understand?
Exactly.
So how did they decide if he was really delusional?
Well, they brought in forensic psychiatrists.
Okay.
And they observed him,
Right.
interviewed him,
Okay.
and they gave him psychological tests.
To see if he was faking it.
Yeah, but it's not a perfect system.
It sounds really subjective.
It is.
So was he mentally ill, or was he just really good at playing the system?
That's the question.
The million-dollar question.
And it's a question that people still debate today.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And it really gets to the heart of the debate about the death penalty.
Right, especially when it comes to mental illness.
I mean, can we execute someone who might not understand what's happening to them?
That's a tough question.
It is.
And, even though the court said he was competent to stand trial and he was sentenced to death,
Right.
his mental state, it just kept coming up.
It did.
And it really makes you think about the ethics of it all.
Yeah, it's a much bigger conversation than just this one case.
For sure.
And it brings us to a really difficult part of this story.
Yeah.
Reséndiz's last words and his execution.
It's heavy stuff, but I think we need to talk about it.
I agree. It's important to see this through.
All right, so we're back, and wow, this Reséndiz case.
It's really something.
It really is. It just sticks with you.
Yeah, makes you think about good and evil.
For sure. And, it's crazy how much attention this case got.
Right.
Like, look at his Wikipedia page.
All those documentaries.
TV shows.
Yes, people are fascinated by this guy. I think it's because we want to understand what makes someone do things like that.
Yeah, like, was he born evil?
Or did something happen to him?
It's like we're trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
I think so.
And there's this one podcast, Dead Man Talking.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
They actually interviewed Reséndiz on death row.
Wow.
And he claims he killed way more people than he was convicted for.
Really?
Yeah, and even says innocent people are in prison for his crimes.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is. I mean, how much of it is true?
Who knows?
It makes you wonder about our justice system,
Definitely. I mean, could someone like Reséndiz get away with all that today?
With all the cameras and technology.
It's a good question. I mean, technology helps.
Right.
But people are clever.
Yeah.
They find ways.
So there's still that fear, right?
Yeah.
That even with all our progress, these things can still happen.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to be vigilant.
Yeah, to pay attention to our surroundings.
Report anything suspicious.
Work with the police.
Build stronger communities.
Exactly, and we can't forget about border security.
Right. Reséndiz was deported so many times.
4 times.
And he still kept coming back.
We need better systems in place.
Absolutely. Technology, manpower, more cooperation between countries.
It's a big issue.
It is.
And we also need to keep talking about mental health.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the justice system.
Reséndiz's case, it really highlights those issues.
Competency, the death penalty.
Yeah, we need to be more understanding and compassionate.
We need to help people who are struggling, not just punish them.
Invest in mental health services.
Train law enforcement better.
Find alternatives to prison.
Focus on rehabilitation.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
It is, but it's important.
It is. So I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the railroad killer.
Yeah, it's been a heavy one.
I have a lot to think about.
A lot of tough questions.
We've talked about human nature, justice, good versus evil.
And we've only scratched the surface.
We have. So we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions.
Read more about the case.
Watch the documentaries.
Listen to the podcast.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to talk about these issues.
Have those tough conversations.
Push for change.
Make a difference.
We can create a better world.
We can.
We just have to work together.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.